Hey, and welcome to a podcast with me, Rich Martin. It is the Rich Martin podcast, named so that you'd never forget how to search for it. And I am putting these together and have been doing for quite a while to really give an insight and to shine a light onto areas of church that maybe don't always get talked about or that the conversations are quite quick. And so I wanted to slow it down and have as many conversations as possible about building church and trying to do as many people and speak with as many types of people that are building church in Europe, partly out of a passion for being able to see the church across Europe strengthen. So today is no different. I have Dom and Sarah John, who are building a church in Cologne in Germany. And they're doing an incredible job. I've known Dom for a number of years, and on this call was the first time I got to meet his wife, Sarah. But I've known Dom, spent a bit of time with him in the UK when he's traveled around, and his heart and passion and Sarah's heart and passion for building church is really endearing, and they're very normal, ordinary people. And I say that in a very respectful way, not in a kind of down way, but in a way that is God is using ordinary, normal people to do significant things across Europe. And so let's jump straight in. We cover all sorts of topics around building church. It goes places that I maybe didn't think it would go. We talk about small groups and what that looks like. We talk around their version of young people in church and how that's working. So it's a fascinating talk, and I so enjoyed it. So let's jump straight into Dom and Sarah John. It's brilliant. I'm here with Dom and Sarah John, who are an amazing couple building church over in Germany. So good to have you with us, guys.
Thanks, Rich, for having us.
We're excited.
And they are fresh off a big Sunday, which is obviously a busy day for you guys. So huge thanks for being with us on a Monday, actually.
Yes.
We
No.
feel fresh. We're ready.
We had a shower.
Well
and,
done.
and a coffee.
I can't believe you've come to me on your day off. So I'm super grateful for it. But for anyone who doesn't know you, which there'll be many, could you give us an overview of kind of who you are? Dom, both of you, Sarah, you've both spent time in the UK, but you're in Germany. You're building church in a city called Cologne. You've been there for 8 years, planting it, nearly 9 in July or June, was it? One or the other, July. And tell us a bit about your journey and how you've got here.
Well, should I start?
Yeah.
So we met in Germany, but I think pretty much as soon as we had met, I moved to England to study theology, to go to Bible college, and did my first 2 years there. And Dom and I stayed in contact during the whole time. And then he basically came as well to the college where I was, and we got married pretty quickly. And yes, we loved our time in England. We loved studying theology. We loved just getting to know the culture, the bacon butties.
Right.
Come on.
And when we were finished with our degree, we were employed in Derby City Church, and we were trained there. We served there for 4 years. And Dom was assistant pastor, and I started off managing the work they had there for the city, the Hope Center, and I helped build that up. And Dom was doing, was it called minister in training? Is that
Yeah.
what it was called? And yes, so after 4 years of being there, we just felt we knew all the time that God was going to call us back to Germany at some point, and we knew that England was like a training ground for us, because churches in England are way further than they are in Germany. And so we loved our time there. We learned so much. And then in, I think it was 2013, God began to speak to us, telling us 2015 was the year we were going to move back. And so we had no idea where. We told God, we know it's Germany, but you need to tell us the city. You need to tell us exactly where we're going. And so bit by bit, the city of Cologne, which we had never lived in, we didn't know anything about the city, but God kept, giving us confirmation. We would meet people on the street who had just spent their weekend in Cologne, and it was, lots of random encounters like this. And we knew, okay, we're just going to go there.
Wow.
So we started preparing, calling friends, asking them, we're coming back. We want to start a church. God has spoken to us. Would you be willing, to move and to build a church with us? And so when we came to Germany, we didn't have anything. We didn't have jobs. We had our firstborn, who was 2.
Wow.
And we had a couple of people who had said they were going to come with us and build the church with us. So it was amazing, to see their faith in God, but also in us. It was really encouraging to know we're not doing this, completely on our own. There are people on our side. And so we were sent out by the church, and it was amazing. And we came from Derby City Church, and we didn't have, any idea what we were doing. So we just said we're going to be called Cologne City Church. So we just
Very
came
creative.
here, very creative. And so that's how we started, in our living room with
How
6 of
many? 6 of you, including
Yes.
your kids.
Yes,
us. Yeah, basically.
one of them.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we started inviting our neighbors. We started inviting people that we knew, and families. Sometimes our dinner parties were more like family gatherings, because I think people just felt, our
Yeah.
uncles, and they just felt sorry for us, so they just all came.
That's so good. And so fast forward now, that was the start. So 6 years in, what does the Cologne City Church look like?
Yeah, so today we are in the city center of Cologne. We just bought a building last year, which is really exciting for us. We planted 2 more campuses in 2 other cities, one in Aachen and one in Bergisch Gladbach. We started a full-time college to kind of train new leaders and pastors. So we have like 17 people at the moment in the process in our Bible college to enroll into the minister and training process. And yeah, just, lots of momentum of people coming to faith. Just 10 minutes ago, I received a voice message from someone literally 10 minutes ago, just before we jumped on the call yesterday. We always have a street team that goes out on the streets in Cologne on the Sunday morning at the same time as we have our service, because we've been doing that from the very beginning, because we always felt like we should serve people that would never come at the same time as worshiping together in the building. And they invited a young boy that they've been known for years, 23 years old, living on the streets. And he came yesterday for the first time with them, right on the spot, into the second service. And he raised his hand and made a decision for Jesus at the end. And a guy just in tears sent me like a voice message saying how incredible this is. He's been praying and seeing these guys for many, many years, sitting at this corner, was 23, really tough life. And now to see him say yes to the invitation, come along, and then be even moved and touched to make a decision was so powerful.
Wow.
And I think that's what keeps us going, these kind of first generation Christians, because it's such a secular city, and
Yeah.
so many people have never experienced a service or even like heard the message of
Right.
Jesus, in the way that actually transforms your life.
And mate, and talk to us about that. You're in this secular city, you're in Cologne, you've got this dream of building church like you're building, which is, 3 campuses, which sounds great on paper, but I could only imagine is really like frustrating in many ways to do it. You've got this amazing Bible college as well. Talk to us about running church in secular cities. How, we all have amazing friends in different parts of the world who, when they start churches, there's like 300 people turn up, not 6 in the living room. And that 300 the week after goes to 450. And then,
Yes.
there's this huge amounts happening, and God's doing something great in that nation or those places with them. But then you go to a place like Germany, where it's highly religious because of what's gone on in its history. And that's been like baked into society. But then you've
Yes.
got these generations who want nothing to do with church, with the message of Jesus. And then you come along, talk to us about the tension of that. How do you go about building church in a secular city? How do you do that? I mean, please solve it for all of us.
Well, it's trial and error, I think. Cologne is quite a special city in many ways. We have the biggest mosque in Europe that is 200 meters from our church building. It's a huge complex, big building, thousands of people there on a weekly basis. We've just been voted the sixth most positive city in the world, which means the access that people have to sex is the highest in Cologne. That includes brothels, street prostitution, sex shops, and then we have 10% of our population. We are 1.1 million people, and 10% of those are part of the LGBTQ community. So these are only three streams that kind of shape the culture of Cologne and shape the mindset of especially the young people. And it definitely feels like a countercultural approach when we, start a church and when we do services still to this day. But I think church has always been a bit countercultural, and I think it should be as well. So I think we're just trying to see church first of all as a hospital where people come that are broken and lost and just looking for a place of healing and acceptance, and I think then church moves into a family, and we try to create systems and formats where church can become family, after people get healed and restored, and we shouldn't stop there, and I think many churches do. Because I think in our third place, we are an army, and we're here to make an impact and to transform society. So I think we should move from a family to a very missional focus. We're not here to have fun and to just enjoy ourselves, but we're really here to populate heaven and to empty hell, very plainly spoken. And I think that's something that people need to hear and need to cultivate in their hearts to be missional focused in their neighborhoods and to have circles that are not church. And I think for us, it's so easy to be in the church bubble 24/7, and we want to model that. So, for example, I'm a football coach as a ambitious father of my son's football team, and it's not going great, but we're having a good time on the pitch. But I think the influence of the parents and the people that come is so helpful in order to stay just mindful of people that don't know Jesus, because I think the longer we are Christians, the more likely we are to forget what it's like not to know Jesus. And on the one hand, that's great because it's like sanctification and we want to grow into his image. But on the other hand, it's also sometimes a bit dangerous because we forget what it's like.
So especially what you're talking about, give us any more practicals. You've talked about like sending people out on a Sunday. You've talked about youth football coaching. You are leading this church. How do you make sure that, you say we don't want to be in a Christian bubble. How do you make sure when you're filling the church strategy diary and you're planning what things need to be, there is this tension, right? Which is you want this hospital to turn into a family, to turn into an army. You do need people who've come in to the hospital to be looked after, to be taught, to be nurtured, and that takes the Christian bubble, so to speak. That takes the community to do that. And then you've got this army going out. How have you wrestled that tension out? How have you made sure that the church diary serves the whole thing? I'm just fascinated about how you might have done that.
Yeah. I last week or a couple of weeks ago, someone shared about how in Peter it says that we are living stones, built together into a house. And he took a really great illustration that he said, like, it's living stones. So on the one hand, it's the life, it's the Holy Spirit moving. It's life, complexity of life, and kids and everything that is like messy. It's not like straightforward. You can't put it in a box. Life happens and things happen to us. It's a phone call and it changes your whole week, and all those things. Living. But then he said it's also stones, and he said in order to build a house, you need stones cut in a certain way in order to build a house. It's not pebbles and big rocks. It's certain stones put together to build a house. And I think he was kind of pushing the point that we need structures and systems alongside life and just the flow of where God is leading us. And I love those two together.
Yeah, great.
And I think some churches are maybe just in that one direction, and it's just let's go with the flow. and it's not very structured and organized, and no systems and processes, and maybe some other churches focus too much on that. And you wish there's a bit more life and spontaneity, and and I think those two have to go alongside each other in order to make this thing work. So I think we are now currently on our 9th org chart, for example.
In 9 months, is it one of those churches?
Because it just doesn't work anymore, and it frustrates people if they don't know who to report to, who to speak to when there's something going on in their team. If that's not clear, it just creates frustration, and it creates like tension in the team. So it's our job, I think, as pastors and the lead team, not just to work in the church, but to work on the church. And no one else is doing that. Most people in our church, they work in the church. They look after people, they shepherd people, they code, they train. But for us, I think as the leadership team, I think it's so crucial to work on the church.
Right.
So structure, systems, ways of communication, reports, also numbers, but also, what is God saying? And
Yeah.
I think those two have to come together, and we have to, and I think we worked a lot in the last years to free ourselves. So I hardly have any evening meetings, for example.
Okay, nice.
Maybe 1 or 2 a week. That's it. It used to be 5 a week.
Yeah.
But we realized this is so unhealthy even for us as a family, because the most important ministry is our home. This is the first service in our lives.
Yeah.
And our kids, they need to grow up loving Jesus and not just, seeing the father leave the house all the time and not being at home because it's for the Lord.
Yeah. But has that not just happened maybe because you've come out of planting season? So when you're planting, it's all hands to deck, isn't it? And then you get a few more people like you guys have got, and you're able to kind of move into that place.
Yeah,
Maybe.
probably. Absolutely. It, at the beginning it was, we knew it was a season where it was hard work. It was going to be, a lot of time spent with people who were working all day. And so their only free time is in the evening. So we
Right.
had to work around that. And through the structures and growth, we were able to say, okay, now we need to look after our marriage. We need to look after our families for this to be sustainable. So that's how it grew into that direction, and it was difficult. It was tough choices that we had to make, and to set the right priorities.
Right.
But to come back to your question as well of how you just keep the focus on the outside and on the mission, I think it probably comes out of a little bit of frustration as well, of seeing other things, or seeing how sometimes churches will start turning, looking after themselves, and then sending people leave, and we see it all over the place in Germany. Churches are empty, buildings are empty because the church stopped looking outside and only looked inside. So I think it's the vision that we have to implement all the time and repeat over and over and over again. The empty chairs are the chairs that shout the loudest. They are, that's the language that we try to use. And Dom has been really strong about, bringing that culture. We're a church that is here in Cologne for the city and not for ourselves. And
Wow.
to repeat that and creating a culture of and an environment where people want to bring their friends and want to invite their colleagues,
Yeah, amazing. And how have you done that, Dom and Sarah, with, a lot of the influence that we see in Europe comes from some incredible places like America or Australia, where the culture is different. The language for us who speak English is similar. And I know over there, you guys, your English is impeccable, and you have this amazing ability to switch between different languages. But we have this flow that comes from different nations. How have you then been able to take these great thoughts or great ideas and lock them into what you're doing in Germany with, you talked about there about we like systems, we like structure, and I'm
Very
listening like,
German.
That's
you're
very
in
German.
We love the
That's how you build the cars.
yeah. It's like your love language over there. Do you know what I mean? If you give
Come
people
on.
a list and you give
quality.
you give them a bit of structure, the German people are
We
going to
should
love
kick
that.
something off.
Yeah.
Fills
No.
our hearts.
Yeah. No, but so how have you done that? How have you managed to go about taking stuff from other places and making it work in Germany?
Yeah, I think we've copied most of the stuff that we're doing, to be honest. Like it's all out there,
Okay.
and you just change the name and the logo, and I think there's so much good stuff out there. And yeah, I think for us it's important to stay true to who we are. So for example, we only meet in Sunday services every other week, and the other Sundays we meet in life groups at home. And we've been doing that from the beginning. And people, especially leaders and pastors, come on, let's go to weekly. And, you're only a half church and stuff. And I'm like, well, it just doesn't feel right for us to do that, because the transformation and the discipleship that happens on a Sunday service is nowhere comparable to what it does on a life group Sunday in our home. Because change happens in the context of relationship, and then that doesn't happen on a Sunday service or in a Sunday service. You can spark something, it can be great, but there's no time to really talk about stuff that is really going on in your life. Especially for the dream team that is making it all happen, because it's busy. We had 5 services yesterday in 3 cities. It was a full day, and so it was great. Many people made a decision, and testimonies of this guy from the streets and stuff like that. Great. But we live in a time where we over value events, and we undervalue process. And I think a life group and discipleship following Jesus is not an event. It's a daily thing. It's journeying with him.
Relationships.
Yeah, relationships. And so for us, life groups is and we talk about that. And I heard it in conferences. Oh, we're not a church, with life groups. We're a church of life groups. And I'm like, wow, that sounds great. So let's go to the systems and look at how much money and resources and staff do you spend on Sunday services or on life groups? Are they really 50-50, or is it more like 90-10 or so? And initially, we had to be honest to ourselves and say, well, it was probably 95-5%, because church planting, we had to set it all up, and it was 6 a.m. start, and finished late in the evening. So we decided to go with that system. And I think that just takes a bit of this kind of pioneering spirit to do that, even though a lot of people are saying, oh, this is not going to work. And the church, you need to be open weekly. This is how we are shaped. It's a local church. How can you shut the door? But actually, the momentum, the growth, we have 70% of our people on a Sunday in life groups. And it's just, and I said, well, if the momentum doesn't go down, why we don't need to change it, So I think that's what it takes a little bit, to take systems and maybe ideas from other places, even from America, but not to be afraid to adopt it to what you are sensing and what you feel is right. Maybe, for York, where you are, for Cologne, where we are. And to be honest, I think this is a model of the future. I think in the future, churches won't meet on a weekly basis in a building, but they will meet in houses. Because actually the transformational part is happening there.
It's really, really special. And I totally forgot, you told me many years ago that's what you started doing. I presumed that maybe you'd moved on from it because you've bought a building, right? You've bought a building, you've gone for it. Let me just dig into there a little bit. So one of the reasons why it's nice to gather weekly is because as much as a lot of work can go there, you can sharpen the culture and the dynamic of what gets put out. So you can decide the worship, you can decide the welcome, you can decide how people are what word they're gonna receive. The negative is people call it control, but I think it's a positive thing. Like there's the negative of everything, right? And sometimes people over control stuff. But I think like curating and serving up something that is like a great place for people to be, like you would do every other Sunday. And that is easy to do with a team, and it means that people know what they're coming into. Then if every other week they're going into a home, like you lose that, I'm going to use the word control in a positive way, you lose that positive control. How have you ensured, or how do you manage that? How do you make sure, let's take this kid that this 20, he's a kid, he's 20 something, I'm 41. So anyone below 41 is a kid, right? But let's take this new person. Let's say he rolls up next week to a house.
Yeah.
Like what does that look like around you, like putting parameters around that, or how have you managed that? Because I'll finish with this. I don't particularly like small group gatherings, right?
Yes.
And I don't like them because like I can be lumped with like a whole heap of people. It's like, oh no, like I got to pour my heart out to people that I don't know, I don't hang out with. Like that's just my honest like reflection of it. And so my whole life I've always struggled. So I'm like, it's just not me. I'd love to sit and chat on a Sunday to people but struggle in a smaller setting. So
Yeah.
make of that as you wish. But what's the answer? Sarah, Dom, give me the answer. I want to know it.
Yeah, I guess it's like maybe redefining what small groups looks like, and maybe even what the conversation and how you do it looks like. Because I don't like the idea either.
I bet you don't like life groups because it was in the week on the evening where you were tired from your workday anyway, and going out again just doesn't feel like,
And sitting
no way to be excited about it.
and discussing the talk from Sunday
Yeah,
that I
exactly.
didn't even like
You don't
anyway.
like it. You don't like that either.
No. So, for example, our life group starts with a big breakfast.
Ooh, hello. Oh, a German
Full
breakfast.
English breakfast.
Oh, not a German
Not
sausage.
stir fry. And that's where we get you in. Like,
Okay.
Rich, we have a full English going. Please
Oh,
come on.
yeah.
And you're, come on, let's go. So I think that's already a change. We sit on a big table right now here, and we sit on a Sunday here with around 10 or 12 people, and we just have a great breakfast.
I'd come to yours. So
Yes.
Bod, come to yours. But how do you make sure that you've just described and the amazing word from Sarah or Dom or the atmosphere that you create, how does that translate around the church?
So I think it's being intentional about creating that culture. First of all, I think it's about letting go of control as well, which is always a nice thing to do in church and as for us as leaders.
Yeah.
Because so much like amazing things can come out of that. And so for example, so we have a life group team. We have coaches for the life groups that kind of try to shape that culture and develop them. And we do trainings, and just coaching them and journeying alongside them and feedbacking and just trying to be intentional about what kind of culture are we trying to create. So and then it's just trying to make it really fun and accessible. And so, for example, we don't do the Sunday sermon talk. We record new content. So for us, when we do a sermon series, so before Easter, we did a sermon series called Last Words. So the last 7 sayings from Jesus at the cross.
Nice.
Famous kind of thing to do maybe before Easter. So we did 4 of those in Sunday services. Including Good Friday, and in between we did 3 recordings of sermons for our life groups. So we say, hey, welcome to church, part 1 of Last Words. Why don't you join us in a life group next week for part 2? So that already is like, oh wow, part 2 is not it's in life. I need to be part of a life group, to see part 2. Yes, you do. So we record them previously and show them. So it's new content, which is nice. It's not too long, but it's like incorporated in like a setting where people actually, I think, enjoy being together because it's around breakfast. It's on a Sunday morning,
And so I've got lots of questions, and I know you probably keep talking, but I'm going to have to keep interjecting with my questions. So sorry, it's my podcast, Dom.
You can always.
What about kids? What do kids do? Like, how do you keep that dynamic of kids?
We have family life groups as well. We are a family life group, and Dom said we had 12 adults and
9 adults and 13 kids.
And 13 kids.
13 kids. It's like a nursery here.
So it's crazy. It is crazy.
Honestly.
But actually, sometimes we thought it's impossible to have proper conversations when you have kids. But actually, it works.
So do they sit and listen? The older kids sit and listen to the.
No, they go upstairs and they
lock them in the loft.
We lock them.
And throw away the key. Here's the iPad and the charger. I see you in 4 hours. No.
And I think that, the kids like the atmosphere actually of, adults talking, praying together. And of course, sometimes the bigger ones go outside, play football. And
so what about
Yeah, it becomes very natural with the kids.
No, I
Because
can.
we don't force it. Oh, you are disturbing right now. We're in a deep conversation. It's just like, just come in, and what, and maybe it's not for everyone, and it's a particular family life group. So
So
in our church, the average age is 27, so it's fairly young. So a family life group is still an exception. It's not.
Okay.
So,
What about money for it then? So like, let's say someone's putting a breakfast on it every other week for 30 people. That's like, budget wise from someone's household. How does that work across a
especially
city?
if it's a full English.
yeah,
Exactly.
everyone brings something. The week before we just WhatsApp and say, hey, I'll bring the bread, or I'll bring the cheese, I'll
Bacon.
bring, so everybody.
Okay.
Yeah, everybody chips in and feels like they're contributing and not just coming to Rich's house to like, to receive something. It's very this kind of consumer mentality that we sometimes have even around small groups. I come to the leader and I expect to be trained and discipled. It's more like, guys, we're in this together. We're in the same boat here. So you bring something and you bring something and we put the coffee on, but that's it. And they clean our house. We all clean up afterwards together.
Don't clean
Well, they don't clean the house, but like we clear the
No, I
plate,
get it.
all that stuff. They're just we just do it together. And sometimes
And do you
it
get
lasts all day, and sometimes it lasts 2 hours.
do you get a community that would only turn up to that and not there surely is some people that like, I don't like the Sunday gathering. I
Yeah.
just do small group.
Yeah, there are. I mean, probably
many.
not many, but there are maybe some people that would rather come to a life group setting than on a Sunday morning. But that's okay as well.
And so I'm fascinated about this, and maybe no one else is interested, but we're just going to keep going. It's helping me with nothing else. So then what about Sunday, the dynamic of a Sunday? That's where you'd traditionally be able to talk about giving, right? Because of finance. Where do you place kind of financial giving? Is it talked about just on the gathered Sunday, or is it talked about in small groups? Like how, especially like I only know a little bit about your nation, but I think if you declare yourself to a government as a certain type of Christian in your nation, you have to pay a tax, like a church tax. Am I right? Like, so it's very intertwined into like into the nation, and so is another complication, right? It's another complication to you talking about giving. So how does that all work?
Yeah, it's right. We have church tax, and it's automatically taken from your gross income unless you intentionally write a letter to remove yourself from that tax, which also has consequences on like nursery places. Because if the nursery is run by the Catholic Church and you're no longer a Catholic member, it reduces your chance to get a place. So it's important to teach people those parameters, because we don't receive any church tax as a Pentecostal church. So we don't probably we are doing like finance series. So we're just actually about to start one. It's linked to the book from Paul de Young, God, Money, and Me, I think the English title is.
Nice.
So then we record again, I think 2 this time for the life groups and 3 for the Sundays. So we have 2 messages now around finances that will be shown in the next couple of weeks in every home, and then we talk about it afterwards. But I think it's a discipleship issue that we have sometimes, not helping people to really understand finances. So we have our Next Steps course after the services, and we put finances in there as well as a teaching.
But would you collect money or collect offerings at a house?
No.
On a Sunday gathered?
Yep, on a Sunday gathered. Yes, we are. Yeah, but I think it's part of the discipleship process, then also in our teaching series to include it in our yearly kind of planning to have a finance series in and
And so, I mean, really fascinated here, guys, but why plant 2 other churches? Why not just go for, Cologne? What did you say? 1 million people were in the city? Yeah, like, I don't know how big your church is, whether it's a couple of hundred or it's not a couple of thousand, but, the church in Cologne, how is it like 400, 200, 100?
Well, probably 800 adults on a Sunday.
800.
Yeah.
Okay, so 800. Why not just take that to 2,000? Why Why not? Why plant out into these other cities?
I guess one reason is we don't have a building that contains 2,000 people. We are not able to rent a building that contains 2,000 people. It's very practical in terms of like we try to go to bigger venues, but it's so expensive that it kind of, our budget wouldn't allow that. And I think the more important one for us was that we felt for years that it is just Cologne, only Cologne, Cologne,
Right.
Cologne, Cologne. And then in a prayer meeting, I think a couple of years ago, we felt that God said, this verse in Isaiah where it says, widen your tent, and it's kind of, I don't know the English
Yeah, you're
version of
doing
it,
great.
but
You're doing great. Yeah.
yeah, sorry.
I don't know it in German, so you're already better.
Yeah, sorry. And we felt that God really challenged us to think wider than our city. And we didn't know what that looked like. But we realized, for example, that many people would drive in for an hour and 20 minutes from Aachen
Wow.
to join our services. And we're like, why are you driving for an hour and 20 to come to the service? Is there nothing close by? And the fact and the reality is, well, there wasn't really for them. It's so
And of course,
yeah.
their friends who don't go to church would never drive an hour and 20 minutes to go to
Right.
church. So the only way to reach them was to have a church, a local church in that area for them to be able, to
Right.
invite and bring more friends. And actually, starting a new church is the best and the fastest way to bring people, from outside the church into the church. So we
Right.
felt like it's the best tool that we have,
Yeah.
for people to get to know
evangelism.
Jesus, for evangelism. Yeah.
We don't
And
want to.
have you got your head? Have you got your? Did you start with the same model, gathering homes every other week?
Yes. Yeah. Right from the beginning.
Great.
In
And
COVID, we changed it to weekly, because we weren't
Right.
able to meet. So we did like weekly services online and stuff. So it would have been an easy transition to stay that way. But we really felt we should go back to that model.
and are you one church, 3 locations, or are you 3 churches?
No. One church and 3
One church.
locations.
Amazing.
But the thing is, like, we are holding it with an open hand. If that develops into its own church, that's fine. Let's do it.
Yeah.
It's.
Yeah.
I think we have to like. It's not about names or like brands and stuff. It's. At the moment they are really benefiting from being part of something bigger. The resources, the training. But in a few years, it might become its own church. It's fine. I think it's important. I think for us as church leaders, not to, we need to build this and it needs to be, I don't know, 20 campuses and they all need to be the same and smell the same and look the same. But I think there's something said of, just that the hand that God has put on a house that you benefit from when you go to other cities. Yeah.
But you've always had that, Dom. You've always had this amazing ability to hold things lightly. Like Sarah, I know we've only just met, but like from when Dom's been over and we've chatted on stuff, you've always had this sweet spirit, which is not about me and my kingdom. It's always been about like his kingdom. What does that look like and how do we reach people? And that's always been really special about how you're doing things. It's not been about how do we get a city church in every location in Germany, and why don't we start knocking on the doors of Switzerland because they speak a similar language or whatever it might be, right? And so that's been really special. What about just kind of like, and I could talk forever, but I'm aware people have got to listen to this as well, and not everyone wants to listen to Rich talking forever with someone, and you've got a job to do. How have you navigated your family, young family? Your daughter was 2 when you moved there. You've since got 2 more amazing kids, which is 6 and 2. Is that right? So 10, 6 and 2. How have you navigated kind of building church, very like fast-paced, dynamic, young church, and raising a family in amongst all of that, and both of you on staff full time?
Yes, I think something that we learned really quickly was not to compare ourselves with other couples with family who do the same thing. Because every couple has different giftings that they use in the church, different callings, and every child has different needs in each family. And our oldest son is special needs. And we quickly, recognized that if we wanted to do this for a while, if we wanted to stay healthy, then we needed to actually divide up the tasks so that, one of us could be at home more and make sure that it stays a healthy environment. So we did that, and for us it's been great. And for me, as the one who was able to stay more at home and be more with the children, it's been a huge privilege to be able to do that, but also to be allowed and to be able to come into the church and actually step on the stage and deliver a message, even though during the week I had been doing something, more at home, and not be involved so much in all the decisions. But yes, I think it's also important to always put the emphasis on the great things about the job, having so many amazing people that our children look up to come into our home and come into a family and be part of the family. It's such a privilege and so amazing. And also always knowing, especially as a woman, for me to know that to make the ordinary significant in the home, and knowing
Great
that
word.
actually God is at work in our family, and he's building his kingdom in our children, and maybe they're the most important leaders that we're investing into the future. And we always say, we're not building the church for us, we're building the church for our kids and for our grandkids.
Wow.
And just keeping that in mind and recognizing that actually our home is the biggest stage that we have, and that's where
Amazing.
that's where our character is revealed. That's where God forms us.
Yeah.
That's where he wants us to be right and have the right heart in our home, and then we will survive the limelight on the stage, and it doesn't work the other way around. So making sure that this keeps healthy, asking for help when help is needed, not being shy about that, and just trying to
Yeah, it's
keep
so
real.
important. I think we don't speak enough about that enough, but I think the stage is a dangerous place in many ways. I think it. I heard someone say every time you step on a stage, it's like drinking a sip of poison. It's a bit extreme, maybe, but I think there's some truth to that. That it really changes your character. It can change your character. It can change. So yeah, I think leading from home is something that is so because we are all aware of our weaknesses and our shortcomings, and the enemy would love to use, especially when it's growing and people are calling you and emailing you and wow, what's happening there, and and I think coming back to that place of like home and family, I think it's almost like I don't know, it's a place where maybe no one looks or no one sees it, but actually it's the source of like sustainability for the long run, because we've all seen it in the last years. So many leaders and so many church, and you think, man, life, I don't want to be another one that builds something and it's growing and it's reaching people, but then kind of, I don't know, because of those stuff, it's kind of falling down so quickly, and it just hurts me so much. And I think I think the enemy is like enjoying those moments of failure, and he's like a trophy shelf, and you think like, come on, and it's in those places at home where the people see the best and the worst of you, that your true character is formed, and that just then translate into your leadership.
Yeah, it's so special that at this point in time you've got a great handle on it. And I say at this point in time because I think my learn over the last couple of years is until you're there, you just don't know, right? I can have all the opinions in the world of how I'd handle millions of pounds if I had it, but until you're there, you just don't know. You'd hope. And I love the fact that you're there and you have got churches in 3 locations, and there's some large numbers compared to the 6 that were in your room, and you've still got a healthy marriage and your kids are still growing healthily and amongst it all. It's like, oh, great. Like you're stewarding your family really well, which is so special. As are many, right? The whole church world definitely shifted where we can look back and go, there was just some unhealthy stuff when we were all growing up in church that isn't there. What do you see for, last question, what are you excited about in Europe? And when I mean Europe, you don't have to say England because we left. We
No, you're still
left,
part of
didn't
it.
we?
We're not European anymore.
No, we are definitely not, apparently. So, I mean, you can include Great Britain if you want, but I understand you might not want to because of the tensions that are in the water. So, what are you excited about in Europe?
in Europe, including the UK. I think the thing I'm most excited about is the young generation at the moment. I see a generation that is just on fire. Our young people, it is just the most encouraging thing I've witnessed in the last 10, 15 years.
Wow.
I think the generation Z and even generation Alpha, many people say, oh, come on, they need to step it up in resilience and all that stuff. But I think we, as churches, we need to fight for them, and we need to allow them to have a say, to have a stage, to train and to explore. I think they're the most evangelistic generation that probably has ever lived. They are, they run around and their shirts and everything is this. It's a guy in our church that is doing like stuff, a Christian like clothing and just like and musicians, and they're just like. We had a Holy Spirit night a couple of weeks ago, and just the amount of young people there, the energy in the room, and just the
so
passion to
good.
see revival in Europe is just so contagious. So as a church, I think we should always look towards the young generation, always. Of course, everybody is welcomed, but we are here to reach the younger generation. And I think in church, we often switch that to, oh, the youth can do their thing in the corner over there. Don't be too loud, please. Don't spend too much money
And tidy up afterwards.
and tidy up afterwards. But just imagine, being at a school play, and you watch your kids, perform, it might not be the most amazing Hollywood performance, but you're so proud and you're clapping and you say, yeah, come on, son, let's go. And I think that's what, and I include myself into that, even though I don't feel very old, but I think that's kind of the mindset we need to shape in terms of reaching and shaping church. It should always be to empower the young generation. And I think it's so exciting. The testimonies of deliverance and salvation is just, we're just blown away, just literally blown away, not just in our church, in Europe in general, of churches and conferences and just things that we hear and friends that we're connected to. It's so encouraging.
No, it's so good. So good.
Yeah.
Sarah, how do people hear more about your church, or how can they connect with Dom and yourself?
So citychurch.Köln, which is spelled Koeln. Sorry, listen to that again. Dom is back on Instagram after a long break of 2 years.
We'll see how long that lasts. It might be only a week.
What's the name there?
I have no idea.
At Dom Zero John.
That's it. That is. It's
we are City Church is the Instagram name.
We are City Church.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for pouring your heart out, guys. It's been really, really, really great to hear what God's doing with you, and just pray that more and more carries on in that amazing city and the other locations you're going to as well.
Yes, thanks, Rich.
Yes, thanks so much.
Well, so grateful for all that they've just poured in there. What a brilliant, brilliant time. I was really inspired personally to be able to chat to them about their journey of church, and I really hope that you are as well. Said it before, but I'm doing all of these podcasts not because I've got nothing else to do, but because I want to try and inspire people to build church all across Europe. And if it's inspiring you, do let me know, because it definitely encourages me. Or if you want me to interview someone, do also let me know. I'm so glad you were with us, and have a great rest of your day.